I am on a journey. Like I'm not perfect. I actually remember when I first started teaching, I taught, in Central Los Angeles, I had Black and Hispanic students. And one of my students was like, he said, he was one of the students that was always around. He hung out with me before school and at lunch and after school. But when he was in my classroom, it was like chaos. And every day I would greet him at the door and I would say, whatever happened yesterday, that's done. That happened yesterday. Today is a new day. It's going to be a great day. And then he's like, all right, miss. And then it was like chaos in the classroom, just like throwing books and stuff. And, he was always getting in trouble because he was loud and he was, always making jokes and always standing up. And he goes, miss, you're racist. And I was like, what? No, I'm not. And of course, that was my first reaction. Then he was like, why am I always the one getting in trouble? And it really woke me up to this idea that I don't think I'm racist, but my behavior says that I am, because I do always get, him in trouble. And maybe it's not, yes, we need to learn. And yes, I need him to be quiet when I'm talking. And yes, I need him to sit in a seat, but I wasn't teaching in a way that was respectful and responsive to his needs. And that is part of racism, is that most teachers, a lot of teachers are white. When white teachers teach Black kids or white teachers teach Latino kids, and they don't have training on how to be respectful and how to integrate the culture of the students that they teach into their classroom, that bias then is imposed on kids. So it's just, there's so much, it's so complex because you've got so many inequities. And then even if you have great teachers in classrooms, they have biases that are impacting kids that can hold them back.
Mm-hmm. Natalie and I had a couple. I used to believe that if you could give kids a good education, they could overcome their circumstances. And I think that is still true to an extent.
Right, to an extent, yeah.
Yeah, doing that, is really, really complex. It's not just let's put good teachers in the classroom because the system is broken. And then B, this, education lives within this broken system of our world and our society that is racist. So, looking at there, people who, I'm trying to think of the word that I'm trying to think of the word. But, you would get I think the Amy Cooper, Christian Cooper example is good, right? The guy who's bird watching. This is I think he went to Harvard and he was a writer for Marvel Comics. This is a highly educated Black man, and still he was treated this way, right?
Yep. So
education isn't the only thing. It is a huge part of it, but it isn't the only thing. One, and B, it is so complex what is going on in our education system that creates inequities for Black children, and nobody is really looking at them.
Yeah. I have our son is
in our community.
Yeah, and our son is ADHD, and we were taking him to a therapist. There was this white lady therapist that we were taking him to when he was, I think around 5 or 6 years old, because we were doing neurofeedback and some stuff. So she was the person who does that in the area, and she said to me, Natalie, I want to tell you this. She said, you need to make sure that you advocate for your child, because your child is a little Black boy and he will be treated, differently or more harshly than the other children. And, and for me, I knew this, but for me, coming from her as a therapist who talks to, hundreds of kids, probably every month, thousands of kids in her lifetime, for her to sit there and tell me this, I was like, wow, you get it because you see it. But, if only more people could see it. But you're sitting here as a white lady telling me that I need to make sure I extra advocate for my child because he will be judged more harshly because of his color. And it's been proven with studies that, kids of color, especially Black and Hispanic children, are disciplined harder than their white counterparts for the same things. I had my son the other day at school. Last school year, he's in 6th grade. He's got the ADHD. We had to put him in private school because public school was not for him. But he had a child.
Oh, this is good.
He had it was a little white girl at school, and he I think took her headphones or something, or I forgot what it was.
She initiated it.
Yes,
That's
but
what
no, she called him name.
She called him a name.
No, he called her a whale, and she went home crying.
Yep.
You know, to her mom that this boy did this to her at school. Blah blah. Said this to her, and my son, they were going to suspend or give him in-school suspension.
Oh yeah. But the thing is,
and I had to go.
It's how they did it. They didn't call us. They sent a note.
Yes, they sent a note. Yeah,
that is like normal.
Oh yeah. So, but what happened was
that is normal stuff.
Yeah. So Ian and I went up to the school, hot. Like, okay, because when we asked him what happened, he explained to us. And we were like, well, this doesn't sound right. Yeah. So, and this is the kicker for me. Why? I was like, this is good. Because after he was going to get in school suspension, once they found out the real story that because he thought that they were just, what do they call it? Egging on each other. Like he thought, what's the word they call it? Roasting. He thought that they were roasting each other. He's just having a good old time with the thing because she's saying things to him too.
Back and forth.
So once they found out that she was also saying things to him, now what do you think was the consequence that happened? Nothing. But you was ready to put my kid in school suspension over what he said. But now that she said something too, both of them should have had in school suspension. Right? Yeah. But instead, they dropped the whole thing.
Yeah. Because at first, because we're like, well, if their parents want to go ahead and tell our son to go in school, we want to go ahead and make her go on in-school suspension also. And once we said that, they're like, the principal's like, well, how about we just go ahead and just drop the whole thing? And I'm like, oh, okay, we can do that. But it's amazing that if we didn't get involved, our son would be in school, in suspension for something that really is not, deemed to be suspended for.
But the teacher quick to call him out and the whole situation. So and that just goes back to
it's a whole system.
It's a system. It's a disparity, and people don't realize, and that's why we have to have these conversations, because now when these conversations are had, administrators, teachers can, and people in general, co-workers can now think twice about what their reaction is to something. And that's why I feel like it's so important that people get upset about all these protesters and these rioters and, those black people are out there always tearing stuff up. But you know what? If we don't, how do we get hurt? How is there change? Yeah. And if I've seen where they highlight over and over again, every time black people protest, it's because of a police brutality. Not every time, but every time it's over police brutality. Because from back in the day, even when you watch old movies, right? They pull up, boy, and they do all this. That stuff is still here today.
Happened to me.
Yeah.
And they have these, they walk around with these biases, and they have this fear because, yes, some criminals, are black people. Yes, some criminals are white people, but this fear that has been perpetuated about black men, especially, that there are a threat.
But why is that?
I don't know.
Why is there a perception that black men are a threat? That's the first question you have to ask, is because, and that's a perception that's purposely put out continuously. Yeah. But why is that?
Is, absolutely.
You know what I mean? That's if they can start.
I don't know, because I wasn't there when it started, and history, you have to make conclusions about history, right. But it's hard not to believe that this is intentionally set by people who are in power and want to stay in power, because if you've got people, that don't have power, whether they be black or white, poor or middle, we're not talking about super rich, you could be rich. Anybody else that isn't part of the elite,
yes.
If you have them fighting against each other, they're not looking at what you're doing.
Correct.
And when you look at some of the systems and the way the systems were set up, it is hard not to think that is the intention. Is if you keep everybody distracted, if you keep everyone distracted and you give them an enemy, you give them an enemy to hate by showing all these images on TV, then they're not going to look at you. The elite making policies that are really hurting everybody.
Yes.
It's not
the
fact that we don't have health care, that's everybody.
Yeah.
It's more black people don't have health care, and they have less access to doctors and all of that. It's worse, but everybody is kind of screwed in this system. And so I don't know I don't have any actual evidence, although I think you can look at history and say this leans towards this being intentional.
All right. Oh yeah,
because
I know in the past it was about like Italians and people from Poland. There was other and then they change the narrative of who they were against.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's changed over time.
Somebody who's below, who's below you, and that lifts you up. And I think that's part of it. It's like as long as there's somebody that you're better than.
See, that's what I said. That's what I told Natalie yesterday. I was like, you always have to have somebody in your society that it deems that you're better than. That's the way societies work. You always got to have this lower class, and that's the problem. It's a human trait.
Right.
But it just so happens that
it happens everywhere.
Yeah, and it just so happens that black people are the ones that are at the bottom of the totem pole right now getting it. And because, like Lauren said, it's the people at the top that's the problem is it's the people at the top with the power that control everything.
Yeah.
Are the ones that are setting these precedents in place. And it's not your typical neighbor. It's your judges, your lawyers, your politicians.
Neighbors are the ones that let it happen.
Yes.
The neighbors are the ones who buy into
right. They buy
into
into
They don't take the time to look it up, and then they vote for these people.
Yes.
Like, there's this representative, Florida representative in Lake County, who's just been spitting out this trash on Twitter that is so racist. It's not even trying to hide, right? He's not even being discreet about it. Like, he is full on sharing some really disgusting stuff, and he is an elected official, and people are going to vote for him because he put this stuff out. This man is making laws in our state that will determine whether or not people get access to things they need to thrive in this world. And he has power, and he is full on not even trying to hide his racism. That is that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. People feel like a lot nowadays, like they have open, but I mean, in a way I'd rather hear it. I'd rather see it and know it. Know your enemy more so than the one that's looking in your face and laughing and having a good time with you and then turns around behind you and doesn't want to, know.
That's what I'm saying. It's the judges, the lawyers, the politicians, the people that actually enact power and control policy. They're the ones that are racist.
Yeah,
that's where it starts is that. Lauren's right. If you can't change policy, you can't really do anything.
Right.
That's where it has to start.
And there's not. I mean, there's some overt racist policies, and they're working to change those, but there's still some. But it's more right now, at least what I see in education, it's more that there aren't enough anti-racist policies. Like we did so many horribly racist things in our history. We actually have to actively work to undo that. And
Right.
Our policies in Florida are neutral. In education, we don't have policies that say there has been historic inequity in education in our community, and we actually have to right that by investing, by making it a priority, and we don't do that.
Yeah, see, and people don't want to do that because they feel like it's taking something from them. The people who, I would say white people or other people, they feel like it's taking. Why do they need that? It's like almost like affirmative action. Like, why do they need that? We need it to play, the level the playing field.
It's the same thing with the hair. Why do you have to make a policy about black kids and their hair? Going to school. It's the same. It's the same thing. It's like, what's wrong with my hair? It's hair.
Our hair isn't done the same as someone else's with a different.
They've had national or state policies about hair that have been recently passed. About hair.
Because
the kids being a lot because the people in power say, "Oh, well, you can't have your hair like that." What? That's ridiculous.
And that's a normal black style. It's nothing that and for a black person, that's the way we do our hair.
That's how you know the extent of racism in this country when a black person has to fight for their kid to have a certain hairstyle. That's how you know we have a lot of work still left to do.
Oh, we have so much work. And I agree, Natalie. I'd rather them be out and you know who they are. And so you can say, you need to get out of power. You need to have no power and no voice because you are dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we didn't know that guy was saying, if we didn't know these things were happening, if they weren't out front, then they would be happening. They just would be happening in silence. And so you got to get them out. And then okay, here are the people that I can actually change their minds. They might not be there yet, but we can be in conversation and work together towards a better world. Because it is, I believe, that saying, none of us are free until all of us are free. And so you might not think this has anything to do with you because you're not black. This has everything to do with you. And you should be driven by compassion towards others. You should be outraged that other human beings in our society are being treated unfairly and unjustly and being murdered. Just as a human being with a heart, you should feel
right. But they don't. A lot of people don't see it that way. A lot of people see it as
they don't.
Well, they're criminals because they may have done something in their past